How to install a drive pressure gauge. This is actually very simple, and it will be similar for any other year model Dodge. This is actually a 96 with a 12 valve, and it actually be similar for any other engine, really, Power Stroke, Duramax, whatever. Anyhow, first we drill our hole. I've already got this. I've actually had my system installed here for quite a while, almost a year now, but I had to make some changes, so figured I'd show everybody how. Okay, first of all, you gotta drill your hole. Now, if you don't have the manifold off, you want to do it while it's in the engine. It's really not that picky. Your turbine's pretty robust. Just make sure you don't beat up the turbo right after doing it. You want to make sure all those chips come out at near idle, if not at idle. But if you want to prevent chips from going in, you can use a magnet, but that's kind of whatever. Go for it if you'd like. But if you have an exhaust brake, turn on the exhaust brake, and with the engine running, drill your hole and tap it. That will push all the chips up and out. If you don't have an exhaust brake, you can stick a piece of wood or something to plug your tailpipe. It'll have the same effect. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just don't have to worry about the plugging exhaust. Even the engine running will blow most of the chips out. Okay, then that is tapped. That is drilled. I forget the size of drill for 1/8" NPT tap, but I'm sure that information is available on the internet somewhere. Okay, then we got our tap. We gotta tap this guy. I've already done it, but normally this is actually not very bad. But with the T-handle wrench, go on a tap. Well, clearance issues. This is actually a good tip for anybody doing anything with tapping that has clearance issues. There can be clearance issues with the tap, and the handle will try and go around. So what you can do, you get a 12-point socket that fits somewhat snugly. That's why the electrical tape's on there, to help it fit nice and snug. Slip it on there, and then you just ratchet it on, and with the long extension you can make sure it stays straight even if you're at an odd angle in your truck. This one's actually pretty straightforward, but it's a good trick for anyone doing any tapping. At least that's what I found. I use that a lot with different odd angles, trying to tap things, tight situations. Okay, so we got that guy tapped. Remember, we want to do that with the engine running, push all the exhaust out. Now we're going to use copper tubing and a compression fitting right here, because obviously this is hot. This is the original fitting I ran. It's 1/8" MPT, 2/4" compression. However, the issue with it is that, see how it's so large in the inside? Well, that's great for flow, but see, drive pressure in the manifold is very there's a lot of pulsation going on, and so if you're trying to read it on a digital gauge, which I am with a digital sensor, then the pulsation will really mess up your readings. You'll get random readings, up and down. Well, a lot. So what I originally did was I have this copper tubing. It goes to rubber. Slip a piece of rubber over top, clamp it in place. I stuck a screw in the rubber. Cut off the head and shoved it in, and that provided a bunch of restriction, which worked well. However, I'm now redoing it because I need drive pressure reference for a second thing, and so I need higher flow. So if you want higher flow, well, but without the pulsation, you have to restrict it earlier in the stream. So I want to restrict it before all this copper. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to use this fitting. You can see it's got small orifice in there. This may look familiar. It probably does. It's for a AFC. It goes into the AFC and hooks up to the boost line going from the head to the AFC. That provides restriction, prevents the AFC diaphragm from seeing a bunch of pulsation. I know a lot of people have gotten rid of these and straight plumbed it with 1/4 inch. Haven't seemed to have an issue, but I replaced mine with a needle valve so I can shut off everything but pre-boost for tuning purposes. I don't know if you know this, but it's very important to have a chicken cock-a-doodling doing in the background on any drive pressure gauge install. If you don't, your friend may have a chicken that you can borrow. It really just improves the process. Okay, now I'm not going to do this on camera, but we're also going to use anti-seize to seal the threads on the drive pressure, the fitting that goes in there, the 1/8 inch MPT fitting. And frankly I've put it on both sides, so on the copper tubing as well, because with this heat cycling, things kind of loosen up, and if you keep tightening it up, I'm afraid something will smash the copper a lot and just whatever. So I just use this, and that way you don't have to tighten up so much. This is copper. You don't want to use the silver stuff. At least I think that's how it is. Anyway, I'm pretty sure this is copper. Whatever, this is the stuff good for high heat. I lost the label a long time ago. Anyhow, so we're just going to dab that on our fitting, and we'll install the fitting and be right back. Okay, so we got the fitting installed. We gooped up both sides with our goop anti-seize, and now we got the copper coil. Now this is a bit much, but what you use this for, what you need this for, is to cool down your hot exhaust before you get to your sensor. So you have to run it through a copper coil. There's the small stuff you can buy at like Napa or whatever for your like oil pressure line. It's not even an 1/8 inch. It's got really small inside. The problem with that is that it will end up clogging with the soot. Even if your truck's somewhat stock and you don't really see any smoke output, there is plenty of soot going on this close to the engine. So keep that in mind. Now we got him all gooped up. We're just going to install him like so. Put it on. So when you wrap this thing, what I did is I just took a piece of 3-inch piping, I think it was exhaust piping, and you just wrap them around, and then you just do the final, that's hand tight for now, we'll tighten it up later. You do the final shaping by hand to get all the pointing the way you want it to, like so. And the thing you can see is that this part got hot, but up to about back there on this first coil, it doesn't show that it got hot. So this is plenty. However, this doesn't just drive my gauge, it actually drives something else as well. So I want to make sure I have plenty of cooling for that. Now, you can either use a compression fitting again, which would work well, but what we're going to use is, somewhere, I have a filter. Let me go get that. Okay, so we got our filtering set up. We just got a chunk of 1/4 inch tubing, like so. It's rated for pressure, plenty. And we got a little filter. This is, I think it's got a 5/16 inch barb, so that 1/4 inch tubing fits a little tight. But once you get it on, it won't leak for sure. So this is, you can get this at any auto parts store, really. Just a little gas or air filter, fuel filter. So what you do is you're just going to slide this guy on here. I'm going to use 2 hands here in a bit. But with that guy on, you hose clamp him in place. I got an exhaust brake that I've made 70 pounds of pressure with, and I've never had any leaks that I know of, and it hasn't blown off, so I'm not worried about that. Just make sure you got plenty of slipped onto that compression fit, onto that copper tubing. You can see I had it up to about here, so double hose clamping wouldn't be the worst thing. When we just run this filter up to the along the firewall. Remember, you don't really need this much rubber tubing, because I had the little screw in the front part here, which worked okay, but it ended up working its way over to here-ish. So because of that kind of restriction filter, whatever. It's like an RC filter if you're familiar with electronics, resistive capacitance filter. you have your resistance on one side and your capacitance on the other. In our case, the resistance is, well, the restriction in the line, and the capacitance is the volume of air, 'cause obviously air compresses. So by having resistance here, and if you have a set amount of resistance here, the more volume you have on the other side, on your sensor side, the more filtered it will be, but the longer it will take to respond. So that's why I'm moving the restriction from here over to here, because I can have it flow more, but because I have more volume, it will effectively filter the same. That way I can run another thing off of it without delayed response. Okay, so we got our drive pressure gauge filter set up here, and from here, I've got somewhere here, we just, oh my goodness, where did I put that bit now? Oh, staring me in the face. This guy here. This is this guy's actually completely hokey, isn't he? I forgot I did that. We just slipped the tubing onto the 1/8 inch MPT threads on this drive pressure gauge. This is electronic, obviously. If you have a mechanical, you just hook it up to your mechanical line and go to your mechanical gauge. But you want to make sure you obviously do that after a filter. Also, another thing to remember, there's going to be a bit of moisture in here. I haven't really had any issues other than when it's below freezing, then the moisture in there freezes. It actually, the filter here was the lowest point, so it would collect in the filter and then it'd freeze and I'd have no dry pressure gauge until it warmed up and thawed. So you want to make sure your gauge is a higher point than your filter, something like that. And if you wanted to go a complete downhill line so it drains back into the turbo, that's kind of tricky, but good luck. Anyhow, and so we just connect those two together and we got our drive pressure gauge installed, and from there it's similar to any boost gauge or whatever. You just plumb your wires or tube into the cab to your gauge and install it like so. But that's basically it.